Cameron!
So,
dude, I called this guy last night, right?
Have you ever had a bread that's just so good you eat it raw?
Yeah, dude. I mean, yeah.
Bread's so bad for you, but it fucking rocks, dude.
What bread is
I love bread. I don't know. It's it's called artisano bread.
So it's artisan.
Soft. Yeah. It's soft and it's great for everything. It's great for sandwiches. It's great for toast. I don't know. The butter melts better.
Bread, and they're not even a sponsor of ours, but they're a stone's throw from the studio here. Schmaltz's has amazing bread.
It's true.
You know?
It's true. Caddy corner to the historic Alico building.
Kim, you look great. You look refreshed.
Thanks. I put my ring light back out.
Oh, yeah, you look good.
Thanks, man. I missed how good the studio looks. And I was like, I've got to do something because it looked like an insane asylum here for a while. So I just threw up a Bruins jersey behind me and put the ring light back out. Brings out my eyes, man.
Yeah, you look good.
Thanks.
Were you doing a hockey show last night when I called you?
No. I was recording Locked On Baylor when you called.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk to you about
Reese Portal. Had to do it.
What'd you say?
Richard Reese in the portal. I had to do it.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Do we care?
Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, I love Richard Reese. I love him as like a specialist. There was a minute there where I liked him as a running back. I think we all did, right? His freshman year.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was some tread on the tires and they figured out a way without him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of my point. You just look back and it's like, man, you had so much success this year offensively and you had two really good running backs and he wasn't one of them.
And honestly,
you've got 4 stars coming in over the next 2 cycles, like, and a ton of eligibility with, I mean, you still got 2+ years of Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass. So,
and if I'm Richard Reese, I mean, dude, I think all of us here, and I don't know the dude, but like, I wish him like the best. Like he was an awesome. Yeah. We had him up in here in studio. He's super cool, like a quiet guy, but like obviously worked really hard and had a lot of success. I would have liked to see him. I know they had Bell, who was like the big kick returner, but I would have liked to have seen them use Reese a little bit more at special teams last year. But whatever.
What are you gonna do? I was surprised he didn't transfer earlier, and like not a knock on the kid, but there was a logjam. And I don't know if you're on the team, you probably even see it before this season. But I was just surprised to see March like that. That kind of handcuffs you a little bit. You can't play spring football, so I don't know. But I guess not terribly surprising. That's what I was doing when you called me and said Todd at the end.
Dude, you got to stop with this guy is an up and comer in the sports biz. People are calling him for work constantly, and he's on Do Not Disturb.
I was working
65. That's bullshit, Cam.
I was on this one.
Dude. Cam, I'm not saying that I'm that important. Every time I call you, I go right to voicemail.
I gotta unblock Pete.
All right.
Pete Sears is going to be a favorite in the content.
On to the moment why I asked you to join me. Last night, I watched the first episode of the Celtics documentary on HBO. Now, 2 things, okay? My 2 favorite documentaries of all time, probably. OJ Made in America and The Last Dance, okay?
Okay.
So here we are. I think it's Jason Ayre that did both those. Or is it the other dude? Either way, I know it's Bill Simmons had his hand in it. But if you liked O.J. Simpson Made in America, it's very similar. And one of the reasons that I love the O.J. Made in America is because the stock footage and how real it is. And, there's only so much like a narrator can say, we're hearing from these guys the whole time, right? No narration. One real piece of sound after another. Is this better than you expected already?
No, because I expected it to be pretty good. Like you kind of know how I feel about these. I said this on my show the other day too. Like I love the Celtics, right? I love them. They don't need a 9-part documentary. Nobody needs 9 parts. Like, that's just insane to me. But you kind of know what you're getting here. And I don't know that there's been any real, there's been a lot done about the Celtics, but I don't know that there's been a comprehensive history of the Celtics thing. And by comprehensive, I mean like 2 hours instead of 9. But yeah, I mean, it was solid. I was happy that they got to highlight Bob Cousy a little bit as someone who's kind of been lost to time. We kind of just, not just Bob Cousy, but anyone of his kind. We don't recognize that those guys were even basketball players, and it's become like cool and chic to just shit on that era and the
Yeah.
is like bolstering his career with that. But yeah, I was happy about it. So no, it hasn't exceeded my expectations yet because I had high expectations and I thought it was pretty well done.
Do you have fears that this will cast the city of Boston in a negative light?
I mean, it will. Yeah, in this next episode, I'm sure of it. This is the part that kind of bugs us as Boston fans, and not that it wasn't real and that it didn't happen, but it's just like, okay, we get it. Like we understand. I mean, now like you hear more about Boston's racial history than you hear about like Birmingham, Alabama at this point. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it did happen. Like it's not the thing that I hate about the Boston racism trope is the modernized version, because I just don't think Boston's that city anymore. But certainly, like they literally shit on Bill Russell's walls while he was away. Like that did happen, and that'll be definitely part of this next episode, just based on the timeline. There was the busing incidents in the 70s. I get it. I don't understand why it's kind of part of every Celtics documentary that there is. This one would make more sense to be a part of it because it's a comprehensive history. But yeah, it's coming. It is what it is. You can't change it.
The Bob Cousy, like I appreciate this so much because I had no idea that like Red Auerbach didn't want Bob Cousy on the team. Like I had no idea that basically he was playing for a team in Worcester. Is that right?
So he played at Holy Cross in Worcester, and he was doing like some almost like barnstorming basketball, but also he had a pretty good side gig going. Yeah. He had a pretty good job teaching old ladies how to drive. That's incredible. He's like, yeah, I can't do the Cousy speech impediment, but we had 3 calls out there, and we had a good thing going. Like, he was like, I wasn't ready to play in the NBA yet, if it wasn't going to be for the Celtics. And like, apparently, I don't know how true this legend is, but you saw it in the doc of like
the hand thing off of Cam, Scotty. Okay, go ahead, Cam.
But like, I don't know how true this was, or if it's just legend. But in the doc, they talk about it where it's like, it was the fire sale of the team that folded. I don't remember what team it was, and they're like, anybody but that Cousy guy is what Red Auerbach said, and that's who they got. And I do think it was like, again, I appreciate that. I don't remember who the talking head was on there saying like Bob Cousy, like before Wilt, really. Bob Cousy was like the basketball player that people knew. It was like George Mikan, Bob Cousy. Those were the George Mikan in college mostly, and Bob Cousy in the young version of whatever this NBA thing is. Like he was the basketball star. He was the Houdini of the hardwood. Like he was on highlight reels, and he was probably the only guy that people went to, like, paid money to go and see before Wilt. And obviously Wilt is on another planet. He's the specimen, right? No one's ever seen anything like it. But Cousy was kind of that way for, small, white, beer-bellied point guards.
But if he was a black guy, he would have been on the Globetrotters, which is something else.
Yeah.
This is all stuff that I can tell you I'd heard about in passing or read about. Whether I'd forgotten it or it didn't have the impact that this doc is having, I don't know. But one thing that I never watched the Netflix doc on Bill Russell, and shame on me for that. But he strikes me as a very complicated guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even like, I wouldn't call him in this documentary an anti-hero by any stretch. He's a hero. Mm-hmm. But when there is some underbelly to him and some resentments that continue to come to the surface. Like even when, that Sports Illustrated article, when, I guess all Bob Cousy's teammates love him except for Bill Russell. Well, Bill, the quote that you had was kind of inflammatory. Like,
right. Yes.
This is what you said. It certainly seems like you've got some sort of issue.
Yes. And that's always the thing. So, and who falls into this too is Kareem. Is like, Bill Russell he's absolutely a hero, a legend, a hero way beyond sports, like the kind that we may not ever get again, which is probably a good thing for our society. But like, I mean, the civil rights and his championing of all of that, like he is an absolute legend, but he's also a prickly character. Kareem's the same way. Like Kareem faced a whole lot of shit growing up, right? And he absolutely stood out. Was it I think it was Wilt's biography that was called like Just Your Average 7-foot black man that lives next door. It's like that kind of thing. You know, these guys they stuck out and they were celebrities, and they were also at the forefront of the civil rights movement. And also they're prickly characters. Like Bill Russell went through a ton of shit, no pun intended, in his time in Boston as a Celtic. And yet, you know, 50 years after he retired, he never forgave Boston for all that had changed and for the fan base that just adored him. He never really forgave them. And it's like, okay, you know, it's the good with the bad. And to your point, what he says about Kuzi, it's like, yeah, Bill, like what you expect someone to like not run with this? And at the time, it's like, if a white guy had said this, they probably also would have ran with it. This was a comment about this beloved, you know, team icon in Bob Cousy. But yeah, and there's always stuff like that. There's always, you know, Bill Russell also wouldn't sign autographs for you know, sick kids in the hospital when they would pass the team picture around the locker room. He wouldn't sign autographs because he wouldn't do it. And so like, yeah, there's a little bit of give and take with all of it. And
where does like your dad come down on Bill Russell?
That's a good question. I should ask him to make sure, but it's probably about the same. So here's a funny thing. So kind of related. His favorite Red Sox growing up was Carl Yastrzemski. Like that was his hero. When he was 9, Yaz won the Triple Crown. But I think today, you know, you talk about him and he's the first one to tell you, Yaz was a dick. Like when they unveiled a statue of him outside of Fenway, it's like 10 years ago. It's a Fenway of Yaz tipping his cap to the Red Sox fans. And I remember him sending me the picture and saying, surprised it wasn't him holding up a middle finger. Like, you know, no one could leave a team event fast enough, faster than Carl Yastrzemski. But he also, like, that was his favorite player growing up. And Russell would fall in the same way. Like he grew up around that time. Russell would have been, you know, his guy. And yet it became, you know, tough for him to be endeared to the fans, partially because of Boston's racial history, but also partially because he was a cold guy. Like he just was. Yeah. And that happens throughout history with other guys like Yaz, you know, same time frame, white guy, same city. And yet there's still, you know, he's still an icon, but people of my dad's generation will say, yeah, he was a dick. You know, he was cold. He was an asshole. And, you know, it's kind of the same thing. So I think I'm also my father's son. So I think he'd probably be saying the same thing that I am, to be quite frank with you, that, yeah, he's a hero. And so you kind of sweep the other stuff under the rug because it's not, you know, he wasn't a wife beater. He wasn't anything like that. He was just kind of a cold guy that didn't forgive easily. And I think the good things that he did for both the Celtics and for the human race was better than those things.
Well, it is uncomfortable, like to what, you know, you do a good job of kind of giving context to the whole picture of Bill Russell. I am not like one of those people who thinks like, you know, I don't get too into like school education and what we're teaching our kids, but I believe it, like every kid, you know, I wasn't there 400 years ago. I wasn't there 60 years ago and 70 years ago when this abhorrent stuff was going on. But it's important to see that stuff and to be taught these lessons and to be reminded of what these guys went through. Mm-hmm. And Jesus Christ, like no wonder Bill Russell's got a chip on his shoulder. You know, yeah. I'm like you can't even imagine. And
which, by the way, because it reminds me, this ties in. Like Cousy has a story in there of he's drinking with one of his teammates, and they can't even use the same bathroom. Like it was Sam Jones. Okay, I couldn't remember who it was. And like that's what like that is what Russell grew up with. I'd be cold as shit too. Yeah,
the story is that Cousy and I think, if my memory serves, it was Sam Jones. They were boozing after a game at in like Lexington or some bar, and Kuzi went to go take a piss, and so did Sam Jones, and it said no blacks, only white. So they both went together and pissed outside. It was a little, and this is we'll wrap up with this. I thought the dynamic between Kuzi and Russell, and I almost felt like Kuzi was accepting too much responsibility. I wanted to like, hey, take it easy on yourself, dude. Like you were a young guy who was caught up in it, and it seems like he had an open mind to anything that Russell would have shared with him. But you don't know what you don't know. Maybe he should have been more of a seeker, I guess, and maybe that's why he's hard on himself. But while Bob Cousy is spending off seasons in Maui being photographed for advertisements, Bill Russell's taking his kids back to Louisiana, and he can't stop to eat at places.
Yeah,
a very different America for those two men.
Absolutely, and like this is what I got from the documentary. And it's been something that I've kind of held in this subject. I think the Celtics themselves at that time did the best they could.
Yeah.
Like there was no manual on how to handle this. It was all kind of coming thick and fast. This is within 10 years of Jackie Robinson just breaking into the major leagues, having one black player as a professional athlete. One. Yeah. And now all the teams are integrated, the league's integrated. You've still got to go down south. It's not an easy thing to kind of do. And again, for Bob Cousy, a guy who grows up in a white part of New York City and then moves to Worcester to play college basketball, he's around a lot of white people a lot of the time, a lot of white Catholics, right? And so it's difficult. And they say it in the documentary. They go down to Lexington for that Frank Ramsey game because that's where he's from and he played at UK. And they talk about like Frank was always great with race relations. Like that's a tough thing to do. It's a guy from Kentucky or what? Yeah, from the deep South here, and he's going and defending his teammate. He says in Kentucky at that testimonial game, he says that anybody in Kentucky who sees color is an idiot. Any
segregationalist in Kentucky is a non-thinker or something like that.
Yeah, and like that is. I don't want to overplay this too much. That's a brave thing to do.
Yeah, I thought.
And they have, I think it's KC Jones's daughters are on it, and they're talking about how, and maybe his wife was there, and she was saying, all the wives and the families were great to us, and some of them were from New York, some of them were from the South, and like it seemed like the Celtics themselves were kind of this utopia. And we also know, of course, what Red Auerbach did for race relations in the NBA. Like he was a fighter, right? So I don't want to prop it up too much like this white knight syndrome, but like, the Celtics handled it, I thought, as best they could. And you could tell it kind of took a toll on them to some extent, like with Tommy Heinsohn talking about the walkout that they had in Lexington, where all the black players left and they didn't play in the game.
And the white guy stayed.
Yeah, Tommy's like, we didn't know what to do. Here's our teammate, Frank Ramsey. It's a moment for him. He kind of tells us to do whatever. They kind of leave, right before the game. What are we supposed to do? So I think there is some intentionality there. There is some thought there. It's the late 50s, early 60s. It doesn't always come out to what we think it should look like in 2025. And yeah, Cousy, I think, was a big part of that. He was obviously one of, if not the face of the team, face of the league. And he's seeing Russell as a teammate and a friend, and he never says anything bad about him, and really props up Bill Russell's legacy, if it even needed to be, for decades. And yeah, he's still saying, I probably could have done more. And I do think it was nice that they had Russell, quote from Russell saying, man, I don't ask you to fight this fight for me.
Yeah.
You're okay. Kind of thing.
But the beautiful thing is, or the true thing, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you go, is that you want Bill Russell. This ain't a Disney movie, dude. Like, he's not going to be, at the end of the day, we're not going to go off happily ever after. Russell's going to say, yeah, that was cool, but this wasn't, and I appreciate that. And we got more of that to come.
That's how we learn.
Share with you and just get your quick comment on it. Outside of live events, okay, and this is just hitting me now. So live events being ESPN, CBS Sports, Monday Night Football, ABC. As a kid, I was raised. Those were the best pieces of television that I was able to experience. But as far as content is concerned, Howard Stern and Bill Simmons, I believe Bill Simmons has bought me some of the most important content of my life and the most compelling content. So hats off to Bill Simmons. He created 30 for 30, right? Really.
It's true. Yeah. People forget that.
The same exact thing over to HBO now. I just and all the podcasts that we can all make fun of Bill because he's like acts like a know-it-all or he is a know-it-all. At the end of the day, he has made, and he's been generously compensated by Spotify and HBO and ESPN. So it's not like the guy's hasn't gotten the respect he deserves, but it's just a reminder. Like sometimes we hear Simmons like, yeah, Derek Lively is the best player in the NBA, and I don't know why they don't trade for him in Boston. Like that is like, it's like, shut the fuck up, Bill. But then
Derek Lively needs an 11-foot jumper. I think
that
would really unlock his game. Would you? I'll put it this way because I think about this with Simmons a lot. I would do anything to have his career.
Oh,
if I could pick anybody in sports media's career, that would probably be it.
Yeah, I mean he calls his own shots. He's a ballsy dude. He's a creator. And he's just prickly enough. I was at the NBA draft in 2014, and him and Russillo were talking to each other, and I very easily could have gone up and gotten a picture. It was just the two of them, and I didn't, and it's one of my regrets. I really would. Simmons is a guy I've never met, and he couldn't care to meet me, but I would just want to say thank you. He's done a tremendous job providing content. He's a bit of a blowhard, but I love him. Anything else, Cam? Anything you got to plug right now?
Get the Cam Show trade deadline, NHL trade deadline. So for all of you NHL fans watching the Pete Souza Show right now, you're going to have a hell of a trade deadline extravaganza.
Yeah, but I think people that watch my show, they realize how great you are, so they'll go to watch the Cam Show, regardless of what you're talking about.
I hope so.
Dude, what about the other night? I was in my hotel. I literally had the all-immersive Baylor experience. I watched the game. My favorite King McClure on the call. Mm-hmm. I had Texas Tech the next night, so I was just sitting there locked in, and then I was locked on. I watched the Locked On from start to finish. It was excellent, Cam. It was excellent.
Thanks. The post game, yeah.
Although you did take my Norshad line a little too serious. You kind of smacked me. Right?
I know. I had to do that for the fans.
He is underrated.
Yeah, probably. I don't think he's the most underrated player on the planet. But he's underrated.
Right. The Cam Show's coming up next. Cam Stewart, I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. Stay with us. We got one quick segment when we come back. Here's the segment. Do Mavericks fans deserve or need to call Daniel Stark? Stay with us.